Hi, welcome to a quick video showing sensitivity analysis on our model to evaluate senior citizen safety interventions. So in this screen, you'll see that you can choose two variables and you can do two-dimensional sensitivity analysis. We'll start with the simpler case, the one-dimensional version. So let's say we want to see at what point we should not pay for the intervention anymore. So currently the intervention costs $180,000. The model is calibrated in the default values, which are picked arbitrarily for this illustration. Um, so let's say we want to know what if the cost ranges from $0 to $1 million. At what point should we say no? And it turns out, well, it turns out that we should say no when it touches $300,000. Now you can see that the beginning, it began with infinity benefit to cost ratios. So all of these are benefit to cost ratios. Uh, and the reason we got this as infinity was because the cost was zero. So let's start this from $10,000 or maybe $100,000 to be more realistic. Okay, much better. So at 280K, the answer is in the red. Okay, so that gives us some idea of the range where we would say yes to this decision. Now, what else could we check? So one very interesting characteristic of this decision is there are situations you can bring it to a point where you'd only say yes if you cared for the dis value of head injury, trauma, and hip injury, um, serious hip injuries. So, for instance, what happened if we turn this to zero? This is one way of asking that question. And here you see that you'd still say yes to the decision because the prudential costs are very high. Now, what if the hip injury hospitalization was really not very much? Let's say it was $10,000 per patient because it was covered by insurance, and the head injury trauma cost was, let's keep it at $4,500 covered by insurance. You'd still say yes to the decision. That's because the ED costs are extremely high. Let's bring it down to $10,000 per patient. Ah, now we find that we wouldn't go with this decision. Well, let's bring it a little closer, higher chances of success. And I want to bring it to a point where we could go either way. All right, so 40% is close enough. So it would still be saying no, but there's a small negative values. And if someone paid us $2,600, we'd be indifferent between making this decision or not making it. Let's go back here now, and suppose that was the belief set we ended up with. We say, okay, let us find out what we need to allocate to our hip injury disk value and our head injury disk value, which is currently set at 0 and 0. So let's move it from 0 to a million for both and perform an analysis. Oh, look at that. So, oh, this should have started from 0, not 10,000. Okay, so even a slight movement on either of these disk values would bring us in the green. And that's because we were so close to saying yes. Now, if you lower the chances of success, let's say a 20% chance, and it's still negative 91,300, and we redo this analysis, you'll see that the red spreads out a little more. Now let's bring it down all the way to what we had kept it initially, 5%. That's a really low chance of success. And we should see a lot more red now. And you can see how much more the red is spread out. And that's kind of telling us that if you don't believe that this program will succeed very much, then you'd need to be willing to put a lot of money on the table for preventing hip and head injuries. This is not the prudential cost, this is your ethical cost. As in, you don't want this happening to someone on your campus, and this is just the money you've decided to put up on the table. It had better be a huge amount for you to justify this decision. So, and for, in many cases, you'd say, yeah, you know what? We spent so much money on insurance and this and that. This amount is reasonable, and you could justify it that way. But it makes it very clear this is a conversation that should not be hidden or under the table. So that's how the sensitivity analysis can help us. We can pick any of the costs or the disk values and see how our decision changes. So Please feel free in experimenting with this, and thank you so much for watching.